The first shot rang out like thunder cracking across dry plains, a sharp, echoing sound that sliced through the stillness of dawn. Smoke curled lazily from a rifle barrel, held steady by hands hardened from years of relentless labor. Behind those calloused fingers lay lands soaked in sweat, memories, and quiet desperation. A farmhouse stood silhouetted against a blood-red sunrise, its weathered beams whispering of generations lost and battles fought quietly, without recognition or reward. Storm clouds gathered on the horizon, darkening the sky like bruises, omens of a reckoning long overdue. It was a land balanced precariously between dignity and ruin, a silent battleground where legacy was about to clash violently with greed, and where courage would be tested beneath unforgiving skies. Henry Mathis stood at the edge of his sun-scorched field, leaning against the rusted frame of a tractor that had once belonged to his grandfather. The late afternoon light of early August cut across the rows of brittle corn stalks, each one stunted by drought. For Henry, age 54 but looking older, thanks to years of farm labor and sorrow, the land represented more than a source of income. It was his legacy, a familial tapestry of sweat and sacrifice. 3 years of failing rains had turned that legacy into a battle for survival. In his hands, he held a notice from Redwood Bank, a threat of foreclosure if he could not produce a sum of money so large it made his head spin. The once patient bankers had sold the debt to an aggressive investment group, Redwood Land Management, who seemed determined to claim his acreage for something bigger and more profitable than small-scale family farming. He glanced around at the fields, remembering the stories his father and grandfather told about how these acres had once yielded bumper crops. In those days, they had close-knit neighbors, folks who traded labor and equipment, families bound by the rhythms of planting and harvest. But times changed. Large corporate farms moved in with advanced machinery and streamlined contracts. Smaller farms like Henry's could barely compete, and drought made it all but impossible to hang on. His house, a modest two-story structure built in the 1930s, loomed in the background, aging wood siding, chipped paint, and a roof in desperate need of repair. That house had seen birthdays, funerals, and the joyful chaos of family gatherings back when his wife Lucy was alive before cancer stole her away. Now the place felt hollow, occupied only by Henry's dog Gus, a few old keepsakes, and the heavy presence of memory. He turned over the foreclosure notice and thought of his son, Andrew, who had walked away from farm life at age 18. Andrew hadn't looked back except for the occasional phone call at Christmas. Henry didn't blame him. Farming was not a life for the faint of heart, especially during bad years. But with Lucy gone and Andrew in Chicago, Henry navigated the day-to-day alone, wrestling not only with the earth but also with his private grief. Some nights, sitting at the kitchen table, he missed the everyday banter that once gave him strength. Lucy had been the family's soul, her laughter, her stubborn positivity, and Andrew, though always restless, used to lend a hand without complaint. Now, father and son barely talked, and the farm was all Henry had left of them. As he trudged across the dry soil toward the barn, he heard the distant rumble of an engine on the gravel driveway. He wasn't expecting company. Salesmen and land surveyors occasionally wandered out this way, but they rarely came so close to sunset. Wiping sweat from his brow, Henry spotted a small SUV approaching slowly, kicking up clouds of dust in its wake. A fleeting thought sparked in him, Redwood Land Management, or some agent of the bank, here to hound him yet again. Bracing himself, he walked toward the vehicle, determined to send them away. But as the driver's door opened, Henry was met not by a banker or slick corporate rep, but by a petite woman in dusty boots who offered a polite nod and a soft greeting. He had no idea that this unexpected visitor, Anna Reyes, would soon unravel his fate in ways he could not have imagined. Anna Reyes stepped onto the gravel, instantly aware of the tension in the air. The farmhouse, the tired crops, and the stoic man approaching her all seemed perched on the edge of a silent crisis. She brushed back a loose strand of dark hair, secured in a messy ponytail, and reminded herself why she had come. Officially, she was on a personal retreat, planning to film nature footage for an independent project. Unofficially, she was running from a media scandal that had claimed a friend's life and tarnished her own once bright reputation. Anna had been a rising star in documentary filmmaking until her partner at a television network took his own life, leaving behind accusations of unethical practices. Unable to face the fallout, she'd packed her equipment into her SUV and driven west, searching for quiet streams and forest trails where she could rediscover her passion for storytelling without the glare of public scrutiny. Evening, she called, forcing a confident tone as the tall, middle-aged farmer approached. His features were worn but dignified deep lines around the eyes, a salt and pepper beard that suggested unyielding labor. "I'm Anna Reyes," she continued, extending a hand. "I was hoping I could camp on your property for a few days. The local map shows a stream running through. I'm filming natural water sources, sort of a personal project." Henry eyed her with suspicion, his gaze flicking to the camera equipment visible through the SUV's open door. "This ain't exactly a campground," he muttered, crossing his arms. Anna detected a guardedness that went beyond mere caution with strangers. Something heavier pressed down on him, though she couldn't name it yet. "I can pay you a small fee," she offered. "I have my own gear, so I won't be a bother." Henry considered. He was short on cash, no doubt, but he also didn't like outsiders. Still, she didn't look like trouble, just another city person with illusions about living off the land. After a moment, he said, $50 a night. There's a spot down by the creek if you want water close by." Relief washed over Anna's face. She'd expected a flat refusal. "That's fair," she replied quickly, tugging a small wad of bills from her wallet. "Thank you. And if you want references," he cut her off. "Don't need 'em. But no fires. And stay clear of the barns. Some of my gear's in rough shape, and I don't need liability issues." Anna gave him a polite nod. She could sense he was not one for idle chatter. So she simply said, "Understood," and walked toward her SUV to drive it closer to the creek. As she maneuvered her car, she glimpsed Henry returning to the barn with heavy steps. Something about his posture struck her as profoundly weary, like a man carrying more than the usual weight of daily chores. It reminded her, uncomfortably, of her own exhaustion, the kind that settles in your bones after a personal catastrophe. Little did she know, the next few days would force both of them to confront the burdens they carried and reveal hidden truths that would bind them together on a path neither had planned to walk. She was no longer just an outsider filming birds and streams. This farm would become a crucible for her own reckoning. Dusk settled in quickly, draping the tired land in a smoky purple glow. Anna parked by the creek, a narrow ribbon of water that seemed strangely vibrant compared to the parched fields surrounding it. She pitched her tent with practiced efficiency, having spent countless nights in remote locations for her previous documentaries. The air hummed with the last cicadas of the season, and the earthy scent of tilled soil lingered. Everything felt simultaneously peaceful and foreboding, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Once her campsite was ready, Anna stepped to the water's edge. The reflection of a waxing moon shimmered on the creek, its current carrying faint echoes of frogs croaking upstream. She crouched low, capturing a few test shots with a handheld camera. Though her original plan had been to avoid all mention of her past or any serious documentary subject, she found her senses alert to every detail. The dryness of the cornfields, the faint cracks in the earth near the creek's bank, the neglected equipment scattered by the barn, it all told a story. She wondered if Henry realized that everything around him was crying out for a voice. Eventually, Anna retreated to her tent to review the footage on her laptop. She had planned on filming only nature scenes, but she couldn't resist zooming in on glimpses of the barn and farmhouse in the distance, capturing their silhouettes against the twilight. As she scrolled through the clips, her mind wandered to the scandal she had fled, the documentary that revealed corruption at a major institution, the subsequent backlash, and the tragic suicide of her partner, someone who had known the moral cost of cutting corners for the sake of ratings. Anna still felt guilt gnawing at her, as if she could have prevented it somehow by being more vigilant, more courageous. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of an approaching vehicle. Poking her head from the tent, she saw headlights bouncing down the dirt path. It was Henry in a battered pickup truck, pulling up beside her tent. He got out, carrying a plastic container. Figured you might want some water that's safer to drink, he said gruffly, handing it to her. Creek water's okay for washing, but it's not exactly pure for drinking. She thanked him quietly. The kindness was unexpected. She had pegged him as too guarded for small favors. Also, he added, there's supposed to be a storm moving in tomorrow. Might get heavy. Just watch out for flooding by the creek. Anna felt a flicker of concern. Her campsite was close enough that a flash flood could pose a real risk. I'll keep an eye on it, she assured him. Thank you, Mr. Mathis. Henry nodded and paused, glancing at the camera equipment visible inside her tent. You're sure you're just filming the water? She hesitated, sensing his suspicion. Yes, mostly nature footage, maybe some local context. With a curt nod, he headed back to his truck and rumbled away into the dusk. Alone again. Anna let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The land, the man, and the storm on the horizon, something about it all resonated with her own inner turmoil. She braced herself for whatever would unfold when the skies inevitably broke. The next morning dawned gray and humid, the kind of sky that felt pregnant with rain. Anna woke early, drawn from uneasy sleep by the trill of a mockingbird and the subtle shift in barometric pressure. She emerged from her tent and immediately checked the creek's water level. Still placid for now, but the air buzzed with an electric tension that made the fine hairs on her arms stand up. Deciding to get some sunrise shots, she grabbed her camera and walked upstream, capturing the interplay of diffused sunlight on the rippling surface. When she returned, Henry was standing near her camp, arms folded, looking out across the fields with quiet apprehension. Storm's coming sooner than expected, he said by way of greeting. You might want to move your tent to higher ground. Anna glanced around, noticing the lower portion of the creek bank was indeed precarious. Thanks for the heads up, she replied, feeling a mix of gratitude and a twinge of annoyance at her own oversight. She spent the next half hour repositioning her tent, carrying her equipment one piece at a time to a flatter spot farther up the slope. Henry lingered, watching with the faintest trace of curiosity. At one point, he offered to help carry a heavy case, and she accepted. The two worked in near silence, punctuated only by the distant rumble of thunder. Overhead, a thick blanket of clouds slowly pushed across the sky once everything was secure. Anna poured bottled water into a camping mug. She considered offering Henry coffee, but worried it might be too forward. Instead, she simply said, "Thanks for your help," and he nodded. His eyes drifted toward the camera strapped around her neck. "Why do you do it?" he asked suddenly. She was startled by the directness. "Film." He gave a slow, thoughtful nod. "You could do anything else. Something that pays better, out of the heat and storms. Why stick a camera in nature's face?" Anna took a moment to compose an answer. "I guess, at first, I just wanted to show people what they were missing, places off the beaten path. Animals most folks never see. But then it became something else, a way to hold up a mirror to what's happening in the world. Sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones we don't want to see." Henry studied her for a beat, then turned to look at the fields. "Well, there's plenty of hard stories here," he said quietly. The wind gusted, carrying the metallic scent of ozone. Far in the distance, lightning flickered through darkening clouds. Without another word, Henry set off toward the farmhouse, leaving Anna alone with the ominous sky. She wondered what it would take for him to truly open up, to share the weight he was carrying. Part of her knew it was not her place, yet the documentarian in her couldn't help but sense a profound story waiting to be told. She exhaled as a bead of rain struck her cheek. The storm was coming, whether they were ready or not. By midday, the sky was a bruised purple, thunder rolling in steady waves. Anna quickly sealed her camera gear in waterproof cases, recalling prior shoots where one careless moment ruined thousands of dollars worth of equipment. She tried to prepare for the worst, lashing down her tent with extra rope and staking the corners more firmly. The wind whipped leaves and small branches around, and the creek's surface rippled violently under sudden gusts. As the first heavy drops fell, Henry's pickup reappeared at the ridge. He stepped out and hollered over the wind, "If it gets bad, you can stay in the house. Won't be much comfort, but it's dry." She appreciated the gesture but could see he was torn, possibly not wanting to invite a stranger into his personal refuge. Still, the sky crackled with lightning, the storm intensifying by the minute. She doubted her tent, even in its higher position, would remain a safe haven. She hurriedly tossed some essentials into a backpack laptop, external drives, and her smaller camera then followed Henry's truck as it plowed through the muddy path back to the farmhouse. Inside, the house was plain yet full of personal touches, faded floral curtains, old family photos on a mantel, a crocheted throw draped over a worn armchair. The living room lights flickered momentarily as the storm rattled the windows. Gus, Henry's aging hound, rested by the door, eyeing the newcomer warily. Anna removed her soaked windbreaker, offering Henry a quick thank you before he handed her a towel. "I'll show you to the spare room," he said, voice low. The house smelled of strong coffee and faint echoes of a cinnamon-scented candle, probably remnants from Lucy. Anna guessed. A short hallway led to a modest guest room, its bed neatly made with a patchwork quilt. She placed her gear carefully on a wooden chair, hearing the rain slam against the roof. Returning to the living area, she found Henry in the kitchen ladling stew into two bowls. The overhead light flickered again, and she wondered if they might lose power. "Not fancy," he said, setting the bowls on the table. "But it's hot." Anna thanked him and sat down, the steam from the stew wafting in gentle clouds. For a moment, the storm outside felt distant as the warmth of a simple meal and the hum of the refrigerator enveloped her. Thunder boomed, and Anna jumped slightly. She noticed Henry's lips twitch in what might have been a subdued grin. "Storms don't usually scare me," she offered with a weak laugh. "But this one is intense." Henry nodded, concentrating on his food. Then, after a pause, he said, "They've been getting worse storms stronger, droughts longer. Feels like the land can't find its balance, and the bank's about done with me." He caught himself, as if revealing too much. But the words hung there, vulnerable and raw. Anna felt the weight of them, her instincts as a storyteller kicking in. She saw in Henry's half-averted eyes a man whose entire life teetered on the brink of collapse. Outside, rain pounded the windows, an echo of all the turmoil neither of them wanted to confess. Night fell, and with it came an onslaught of wind and rain that howled like an unearthly chorus around the farmhouse. Anna helped Henry gather flashlights and candles, anticipating a power outage. They checked the windows, bolstered by old towels to keep water from seeping in. In the flicker of occasional lightning, she glimpsed Henry's face tense but resolute, as if he'd weathered storms far greater than this. They spoke little, the roar of the weather all but drowning out ordinary conversation. At one point, Anna ventured to ask about the foreclosure, but Henry sidestepped the question. His pride, she gathered, was as deeply rooted as the farm's oldest oaks. Instead, he focused on the practical tasks at hand tending to Gus, double-checking the generator in the barn. While he was gone, Anna paced the living room, eyes lingering on framed photographs Henry, younger and happier, standing beside a radiant woman Lucy, she assumed, then a teenage boy who had his father's height and serious expression. She wondered if that was Andrew, the son who'd left. When Henry returned, drenched from head to toe, he muttered something about the generator's fuel line needing repair. "Nothing I can do tonight," he said. "If the power goes, we just have to wait it out." Anna offered to help if there was anything else needed, but he shook his head. "Already done," he replied. "You should get some sleep if you can. Couch is yours. The guest room, too, if you prefer a bed." "Thank you," she said softly. "Henry, I really appreciate everything. You didn't have to let me in." He gave a non-committal shrug. "Nobody should be out in a storm like this," he said, before trudging upstairs, presumably to his own bedroom. Alone again, Anna sank onto the couch. She could feel a strange sensation blossoming in her chest, something akin to relief, but also guilt. She realized she was grateful for the simple humanity Henry had shown. It occurred to her that in all her recent struggles, she hadn't allowed herself to ask for or accept help. She had run away from the media scandal, from her own remorse. from any meaningful connection. But here, in a battered farmhouse under siege by storm winds, she couldn't run, nor did she want to. Lightning illuminated the room for an instant, revealing the photograph of Lucy again. The woman in the picture looked so warm, so full of life. Anna wondered what she had been like. Did she share Henry's stoicism, or had she been the chatterbox? The heart of the home, thunder shook the walls, and somewhere upstairs a door slammed from the wind's force. Anna tucked herself under the quilt, each gust beyond the walls reminding her of the uncertain world she had left behind. The farm felt like a realm out of time, a place teetering on the edge of ruin yet still pulsing with the remnants of a love story. Closing her eyes, she drifted into uneasy sleep, lulled by the storm's relentless cadence and haunted by the sense that her own tempest was far from over. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving a hush across the farmland. Anna awoke to an eerie calm, the house saturated with dim morning light. She peeked out the window and saw debris scattered across the yard branches, pieces of roofing and broken fence rails. The fields, already battered by drought, looked even more forlorn under the weight of storm runoff pooling in low spots. Pulling on a sweater, Anna ventured outside to assess the damage. Henry was already there, wearing a battered cap and muddy boots, working to clear fallen limbs from the driveway. Gus trailed behind him like a faithful shadow. The storm's violence had ripped a portion of the barn's roof clean off. Shards of corrugated metal lay bent around the property. Anna approached cautiously, not wanting to intrude but feeling compelled to help. "Anything I can do?" she asked. Arms folded against the morning chill. He paused, scanning the yard. "Couple of tarps in the barn. We need to cover that hole before the next rain. You mind fetching them?" She agreed. Stepping into the barn's half-light, dust motes swirled in the beams of sun that stabbed through the damaged roof. Rusted tools hung on nails driven into wooden beams, each one telling a story of seasons past. She found the tarps rolled up near a stack of hay bales. Dragging them out, she realized just how heavy they were, but adrenaline fueled her steps. Back outside, they worked together, Henry on the ladder, Anna handing him nails, rope, and the tarp corners. The process was precarious. Twice, the ladder wobbled, and Anna steadied it while Henry grunted in frustration. As they toiled, the sun rose higher, burning off the last remnants of storm cloud. By noon, a patchwork covering was in place, though it looked far from perfect. Henry climbed down, wiping sweat from his brow. "It'll hold for now," he said. "I'll need a proper repair soon, but at least the hay won't get soaked." Anna nodded, her arms aching. She had documented floods and hurricanes before, but always with a lens between her and the chaos, rarely stepping into physical labor. This felt strangely grounding. She glanced at Henry, wondering if he was grateful or just tolerating her presence. His face remained guarded, yet he hadn't turned her away. They paused for a lunch break inside the barn's entrance, where Henry produced a thermos of coffee and 2 tin cups. They drank in silence for a while. Eventually, when Anna summoned the courage to broach the subject again, the state of the farm, and whether it could be saved. "I saw the papers on your kitchen table," she admitted softly. "The foreclosure notice, I wasn't snooping, but it was there. Is there anything you can do?" He stared at her, face hardening. "Ain't your business," he finally said, but the rancor in his voice was tempered by resignation. "Truth is, Redwood Land Management wants this place. They're pushing the bank to foreclose so they can come in and do who knows what with the water rights." He looked away. "I'm behind on payments. There's no denying. Unless a miracle happens, I'll lose the farm." Anna listened intently as Henry's words hung in the dusty air. She sipped the last of her coffee, feeling the bitterness coat her tongue. "I'm sorry," she said, feeling the weight of how inadequate that sounded. Her chest tightened with the urge to help, despite barely knowing the man. After all, wasn't helping the powerless precisely why she became a documentarian? But she also knew that offering pity or unsolicited solutions might only harden his walls. "So," she asked gently, "how long do you have, 60 days?" Henry replied, glancing at a calendar tacked to a support beam. "That's when they can legally start the auction." maybe less. If Redwood pushes. He set the tin cup down and stood abruptly, as if the conversation was already too much. Appreciate the help with the roof, he said. I gotta check the fence lines. She followed him out, trailing by a few steps. The morning sun illuminated the farmland, revealing puddles of rainwater that glistened like small mirrors in the broken ground. It was a land of contradictions, so thirsty for consistent moisture, yet battered by sudden downpours. Henry strode across the yard, checking fence posts where the wood looked splintered. Anna caught up to him. I can help, she offered again. I have some time before I move on. His jaw tightened, but he nodded once. Suit yourself. They spent the next hour driving along the perimeter in his pickup, stopping every so often where fallen branches had taken out sections of wire. At each stop, Anna grabbed the spare fencing supplies while Henry hammered nails and secured posts. Through the open windows, she recorded audio with a small device, capturing the natural sound of farmland in post-storm disarray. She wasn't sure why she did it, maybe just a reflex of her profession. Or maybe she wanted to bottle the rawness of this moment, the sense of a life on the brink. It was after they finished mending the last braid that Henry, breathing heavily, leaned against the post and stared out across the rolling terrain. My dad used to say the land was part of our blood, he said, voice subdued. He fought so hard to keep it going through rough times. Part of me feels like I'm betraying him just thinking about letting it go. Anna placed a hand on his shoulder, hesitant yet earnest. Farms like yours are more than property, she said. They're living histories. It's not a betrayal if circumstances forced your hand. Henry's gaze flicked to her, a mixture of gratitude and sadness in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it. The rumble of thunder in the far distance broke the spell. Another storm seemed to be brewing. We should get back, he muttered, pushing off the post. As he turned to the truck, Anna felt a surge of resolve. She had fled her own past. But here was a chance maybe her skill with storytelling could do some good. If only Henry would let her. With the sky growing dark again, they drove back in a tense, thoughtful silence, each lost in private questions about whether this farm could be sold and at what cost. As evening fell, Anna found herself uploading the day's footage onto her laptop in the farmhouse kitchen. Henry had retreated upstairs, perhaps to tidy up or to give himself space. A single light bulb buzzed overhead, casting a warm glow on the faded tiles and oak cabinets. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the soft snores of Gus, who lay sprawled near the back door. Scrolling through those raw clips, Anna noticed something remarkable, the tension in Henry's face every time he talked about the land, the heartbreak in his eyes when he surveyed the damage. She felt a pang of conscience. Documenting someone's pain was always a delicate matter. Hadn't she learned that the hard way? Yet something about Henry's struggle felt essential to capture. So many family farms were on the brink, overshadowed by mega corporations and hammered by climate extremes. A story like this, if told honestly, could resonate with countless people who had no idea what small farmers endured. She plugged in her microphone, intending to record some notes. But before she could begin, footsteps sounded on the stairs. Henry appeared, arms crossed. What are you doing? He asked, his tone guarded but not hostile. She swallowed, then lifted the mic slightly. Just making an audio log my observations. I do it routinely. Helps me keep track of my footage and thoughts. He shifted uneasily. You said you were just filming nature, he reminded her. Anna closed her eyes briefly, then nodded. I did. But after seeing what you're going through, I think no. I feel it might be worth sharing. People need to see how hard it is for someone like you to keep a farm afloat. She paused, gauging his reaction. I'm not saying it would fix things, she added softly, but it could shine a light, maybe stir public support. And Redwood Land Management might not like that kind of attention. Henry's jaw worked side to side. I'm not looking for a pity party, he snapped. She offered a gentle smile. I understand, but I've seen documentaries change outcomes. At the very least, they change perceptions. And if Redwood is playing dirty, maybe public awareness can help. She could see him wrestle with the idea. For a man used to self-reliance, admitting the need for outside help must have felt like humiliation. Finally, Tishy, Henry exhaled. Let me think on it, he said. Anna gave a small nod. That was all she could ask for now. She disconnected the microphone, feeling her nerves settle. I'm going to step out for some air, she said, heading to the porch. He didn't try to stop her. Outside, the night sky was a tapestry of stars, freed from the storm clouds that had dominated earlier. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, and Anna inhaled the fresh scent of wet earth. Pulling her sweater tighter, she looked out toward the distant silhouettes of the fields. In the quiet darkness, she felt the first real spark of purpose she had experienced in months. Perhaps this was where she could begin to rebuild, helping Henry, while atoning for the guilt she still carried from her own past. For the first time, she believed she might turn her camera towards something redemptive, rather than the next sensational revelation. 2 days later, the weather stabilized into a pattern of muggy heat, the sun baking the soggy fields until steam seemed to rise from the soil. Anna remained on the farm, with Henry's reluctant blessing. She helped mend fences, fed the chickens, and even attempted to fix a section of rusted gutter along the side of the house. At first, Henry remained distant, leaving her to her own devices while he tackled the endless chores. But each evening, as they sat at the kitchen table, an unspoken camaraderie formed between them. On the third morning, she found him in the barn, rummaging through a large wooden chest. Hand me that wrench, he said, pointing to a shelf overhead. Anna complied, noticing the label on the chest read heirlooms. As Henry dug deeper, she caught glimpses of old diaries, pressed flowers, and tin boxes filled with seeds. What's all that, she asked. Her curiosity piqued. He paused, lifting an ornate metal box. Family seeds, he said, varieties that my granddad saved drought-resistant beans, hardy tomatoes, old corn strains. Lucy and I used to experiment in a small patch by the creek. A flicker of sadness crossed his eyes at the mention of his late wife. Haven't touched these in a while. Anna felt her heart skip a beat. That's incredible, she said softly. I've read about seed-saving farmers passing down heritage crops. It's important work. Henry nodded, then placed the box aside. Thought it might help during the drought, but time got away from me. Then everything else happened. The subtext was clear: Lucy's illness, Andrew leaving, financial turmoil, not wanting to pry too deeply. Anna shifted the focus back to the seeds. There could be something valuable here. She ventured, if Redwood Land Management takes over, they'll never preserve this kind of knowledge. They'll probably plow through and do whatever's most profitable. Henry's jaw clenched. They sure as hell won't care about seeds or family history. Anna bit her lip, considering an idea. Henry, she began tentatively, what if we show people the real value of your farm? Not just a piece of land, but a living archive of traditional, resilient crops. That's a story worth telling. He stopped fiddling with the tools and turned to face her. What exactly are you proposing? She took a breath, recalling her days in the field, filming segments on sustainable agriculture. I'm proposing we film you talking about these seeds. Show the creek and how it still runs strong even in drought. Highlight how your small patch of land could be a model for future farming practices. People respond to stories of hope and preservation. This could bring support not just emotionally, but maybe even financially. Henry looked away, lost in thought. After a long silence, he whispered, Lucy believed in that. She used to say these seeds were our insurance for the future. Anna reached out, lightly touching his arm. She was right, Anna said gently, and it's not too late to make the world see it. For a moment, they locked eyes, and she could almost see the flicker of determination behind his weariness. At last, he cleared his throat, brushed imaginary dust off his jeans, and said, all right, let's give it a try, but no pity. Show it for what it is, our last stand. The filming began in earnest the next morning. Anna selected a few key spots around the farm to capture Henry's daily routine, feeding the animals at sunrise, walking the perimeter to survey the battered fields, and checking the creek's flow rate. With each scene, she gently guided him through on-camera reflections, steering clear of anything that felt forced. At first, Henry was stiff, unsure where to look or how to phrase his thoughts. But gradually, he grew more comfortable, speaking candidly about the challenges of small-scale farming, the heartbreak of losing Lucy, and the bittersweet estrangement from his son Andrew. In the afternoons, they focused on the seeds. Anna set up a makeshift studio in the barn, draping a clean canvas behind Henry's workbench to emphasize the preciousness of the old metal seed box. There, Henry carefully opened small glass vials and cloth pouches, revealing beans with unusual markings, corns with bright-colored kernels, and tomatoes rumored to thrive even with minimal water. He explained how Lucy had taught him to rotate crops naturally, to save seeds from the strongest plants, and to let nature dictate the pace rather than forcing chemical interventions. As he spoke, a quiet pride replaced his usual stoicism. It was as if he finally had permission to celebrate something uniquely his own. Anna recorded hours of footage, mindful to capture not just his words, but the subtle expressions on his face. She also took sweeping shots of the property, the battered barn, the ridge where storms brewed, and of course, the creek that seemed to defy the drought. She couldn't ignore the occasional pickup truck from Redwood Land Management driving by on the distant road, its presence a reminder of the ticking clock on Henry's land. Each night, she spent hours editing rough cuts on her laptop, shaping the narrative but leaving room for the raw, unpolished truth of Henry's struggle. On the fourth day, they ventured to a far corner of the property where a small orchard used to stand. Gnarled apple trees poked out of the ground like bones of a forgotten era. Lucy planted these when Andrew was a baby, Henry said quietly, resting a hand on a trunk scarred by time and disease. He used to run through these rows, chasing fireflies at dusk. Anna noticed the crack in his voice. "Have you talked to him lately?" she asked softly. Henry shook his head. "Not since last Christmas. I couldn't bear to tell him about the foreclosure. Didn't want him to see me as a failure." Later, while reviewing the orchard footage, Anna realized this location symbolized everything Henry stood to lose: his family's memories, Lucy's legacy, and a potential future that might never materialize. The notion fueled her resolve to finish the documentary sooner rather than later. She knew she had compelling material, but also that time was short. Redwood Land Management would not wait indefinitely, and Henry deserved a fighting chance. With each edit, she honed in on the universal themes: a man's bond with the land, the fragility of old ways in a modern world, and the seeds of renewal that might still exist if only someone would listen. She prayed that her film, once shared, could shift the tides for Henry Mathis before the final curtain fell. That weekend, Redwood Land Management made its move. A notice arrived by courier, informing Henry that the foreclosure process would be expedited. They cited unrecoverable arrears and stated they'd be seeking a court date in less than 3 weeks. The letter also hinted at Redwood's larger ambitions. They planned to repurpose the creek's water rights for industrial use, possibly bottling or irrigation for nearby commercial developments. The subtext was clear: they had no interest in preserving heritage seeds or small-scale sustainable agriculture. Henry slammed the letter down on the kitchen table, rage flickering in eyes that were normally resigned. "They're vultures," he spat, pacing the floor while Anna watched. "They see a chance to pounce, strip the land of what they want, and move on. No respect for the decades of blood and sweat poured into this place." She could see his hands trembling, the letter curled in one fist. "We still have some time," she said, voice calm but urgent. "I'm nearly done with a short version of the documentary. If we release it strategically, maybe at a local event or online, we could draw attention to what's happening. Public outcry might force Redwood to slow down." Henry pounded a fist on the table, scattering a salt shaker in the remains of his morning coffee. "I'm not a charity case," he growled. "I don't want pity donations, and Redwood has lawyers, lots of them. What can the video do?" Anna stood her ground, adrenaline firing through her veins. "It's not about pity. It's about showing people the truth. Companies like Redwood operate in the shadows. They don't want public scrutiny. If enough people start asking questions, Redwood might back off, or at least the bank could reconsider. Besides, she added gently, you're not alone in this. There are hundreds of small farmers facing similar threats. Your story could help them, too. He paused, seemingly caught off balance by her fervor. Before he could respond, a loud knock echoed from the front porch. Gus barked as Henry opened the door, revealing a grim-faced man in a suit, someone representing Redwood or the bank. No doubt, the man, who introduced himself as Mr. Powell, informed Henry that Redwood had authorized him to make a final purchase offer, a sum significantly below market value. We can close quickly, Powell said, with a practiced air of politeness. Save you the trouble of foreclosure proceedings. Henry glared, refusing to take the envelope Powell offered. Get off my land, he said through clenched teeth. Powell hesitated, eyes flicking to Anna, who stood behind Henry with her camera at her side. Sensing tension, Powell placed the envelope on a small table by the door and turned to leave. We'll be in touch, he said, disappearing into the bright afternoon. Anna's heart pounded. She had captured parts of the exchange on film, her instincts guiding her to record discreetly. Henry exhaled a shaky breath, slammed the door, and turned to her. Fine, he muttered, voice hoarse. We do this. Show your film wherever you can. Just make sure Redwood's name gets dragged out in the open for everyone to see. He grabbed the letter from the table and tore it in half. Maybe that's our last hope. In his eyes burned a fierce determination Anna had not seen before, and she felt a surge of confidence that their combined efforts might yet turn the tide. Anna worked tirelessly to piece together a concise, powerful documentary. She chose a simple title, Seeds of Hope, and crafted a narrative that interwove Henry's personal struggles with the broader issues facing small farmers across the country. The footage included sweeping aerial shots of the cracked land, close-ups of heritage seeds in their vibrant colors, and candid interviews with Henry, speaking plainly about his love for the farm and his frustration at its impending loss. She spliced in short, expert interviews she'd accumulated over her career, an agronomist explaining the importance of biodiverse seed strains, a climate scientist warning of more extreme weather, and a local historian discussing the vanishing legacy of family farms. She posted a short teaser on social media, urging people to attend a community screening at the nearest town hall. Word spread faster than she anticipated. Local advocacy groups caught wind and joined forces, turning the screening into a mini-event with flyers, potluck food tables, and even a local news crew eager for a human interest piece. Henry was reluctant to appear in public. His pride bristled at the idea of asking for help in front of neighbors and strangers. But Anna convinced him that his presence was crucial. You're the heart of this story, she said. If people hear it from you directly, they'll care. On the day of the screening, Henry wore his best shirt, which was still wrinkled but decent. Anna hurried around, setting up a projector and sound system, aided by a handful of volunteers. Townsfolk milled about, curious and supportive. A soft murmur filled the room as the seats began to fill. In the front row, Henry sat stiffly, arms folded, while Anna introduced the film. Thank you all for coming, she said into a microphone, her voice quivering with nervous energy. This documentary started as a simple nature project, but I discovered a story that matters to every family who cares about the food we eat and the land we share. The lights dimmed, and the film began. Scenes of Henry's worn hands planting seeds, Lucy's old orchard, and the battered barn flickered across the screen. A hush fell over the crowd, punctuated by the occasional gasp when Redwood Land Management's menacing role was shown. There was a poignant moment with Henry speaking about Lucy, recalling how she taught him that seeds were like hope in your pocket. By the end, tears glistened in more than a few eyes. When the lights came up, the applause was instantaneous. Henry looked stunned, swallowing hard as neighbors approached to shake his hand, offering words of encouragement. A local farmers market organizer pledged to help him sell produce at a premium price if he could manage another season. The town's mayor, who rarely took stands on private business matters, publicly chastised Redwood for overreaching. Some audience members asked if a GoFundMe campaign or community fundraiser could be set up. Henry could only nod. Overwhelmed by this outpouring of support, Anna hovered by the projector, catching her breath. She knew this was only the first step. Redwood was well-funded and aggressive. Yet tonight she witnessed a crack in the corporation's facade. Ordinary people, armed with knowledge and compassion, could shift the narrative. As Henry stood among well-wishers, his expression moved from disbelief to a cautious spark of hope. In that moment, Anna realized the power of a story well told and the profound courage it takes to share it. Word of the screening spread beyond the small town. Social media shares of the Seeds of Hope teaser skyrocketed, and soon Anna's inbox overflowed with the inquiries, journalists wanting quotes, environmental groups asking how they could help, and other farmers sharing their own tales of corporate intimidation. A regional news station ran a segment on the Redwood controversy, featuring clips of Henry's interview. The pressure mounted quickly, and Redwood Land Management found itself facing negative publicity it had never anticipated. Even Redwood's local representative, Mr. Powell, was quoted in an article trying to downplay the company's objectives, insisting they intended to coexist with local traditions. Few believed him. Amidst the media storm, a short but intense phone call came from Chicago, a voice Anna didn't recognize. "My name's Andrew Mathis," the caller said. Anna's heart quickened. "Henry's estranged son. I saw the short documentary you posted online." He continued, "I had no idea how bad things were for my dad. Is it true about the foreclosure?" Anna confirmed it, her voice gentle. There was a pause on the line, filled with a tension reminiscent of a wound left untended for too long. "He never told me," Andrew said at last, a mix of anger and regret in his tone. "I want to help, but I'm not sure how he'll react to me suddenly showing up." Anna sensed the pain behind his words. "He needs you," she said simply. 2 days later, Andrew arrived on the farm. Henry was repairing a tractor engine when he saw a car parked in the driveway, sporting out-of-state plates. Andrew emerged, wearing a crisp collared shirt and carrying an overnight bag. The father froze, wiping grime from his hands. Neither spoke for several seconds. Then Andrew cleared his throat. "Dad," he said softly, "I saw the film. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." Henry looked away, blinking hard. "Guess it took a big crisis for you to remember this place existed," he replied. But the resentment in his voice seemed overshadowed by relief. Anna, filming from a discreet distance, captured their first awkward hug. She decided not to intrude any further, stepping back to let father and son talk in private. Later, she learned Andrew had done well in Chicago, working for a technology startup. Though he couldn't single-handedly save the farm from its financial crisis, he offered to pitch in what he could. More importantly, Andrew promised to speak publicly on his father's behalf. He had connections in city circles that might galvanize more significant support. The next afternoon, Redwood Land Management staged a counteroffensive. Their lawyers sent cease and desist letters accusing Anna of defamation and warning that Redwood would pursue legal action if she continued spreading misinformation. Undeterred, Anna and Henry expanded their fight. Supporters launched a crowdfunding campaign online, titled "Save the Mathis Farm," which raised money more quickly than anyone expected. Henry was flooded with phone calls, some from strangers living hundreds of miles away, offering small donations or simply words of encouragement. On top of that, an environmental nonprofit offered to help Henry apply for a grant to preserve heritage seeds, citing their importance in climate-resistant agriculture. Through it all, Andrew remained on the farm, bridging the gap between city resources and rural realities. He accompanied Henry to a meeting with Redwood's lawyers, where father and son presented a united front, refusing any lowball buyout and highlighting the negative PR Redwood would suffer if they persisted. Redwood's legal team left with furrowed brows, suddenly aware that they were no longer dealing with an isolated farmer. The tides were turning, and Redwood, once an unstoppable force, began to flinch under the glare of public opinion. A month later, the farm bore signs of new life, though the foreclosure process hadn't been formally canceled. Redwood Bank, now under intense scrutiny, agreed to renegotiate. The final settlement wasn't everything Henry wanted. He'd still carry debt, but it granted him more time and better terms, enough to potentially stabilize the farm. More importantly, The seeds that he and Lucy had lovingly preserved began to sprout in raised garden beds near the creek. Anna captured stunning footage of bright seedlings emerging from the soil, each leaf a testament to the power of resilience and hope. The culminating victory came when a coalition of environmental groups, along with a philanthropic foundation inspired by Anna's documentary, contributed funds to establish a pilot project on the Mathis farm. Officially titled the Heritage Seed and Water Preservation Initiative, the project aimed to showcase how small-scale farms could thrive in the face of climate challenges without selling out to corporate interests. Andrew announced he would remain in the area indefinitely, working remotely and helping his father manage the new initiative. Their once frayed relationship found a renewed sense of purpose, each learning how to speak to the other again without the weight of unresolved blame. On a crisp morning, Anna filmed a final sequence, Henry standing beside Andrew by the orchard Lucy had planted, the old apple trees still leaning in silent witness. This time, new saplings dotted the rows, bred from heritage varieties known for their resilience. Henry spoke directly to the camera, his words steady and introspective. "I thought I was alone," he said. "I thought nobody cared if this land dried up and blew away. But I've learned that sometimes it takes speaking out to find your allies. We don't have all the answers, but we're willing to try. That's farming. Put a seed in the ground, give it your best, and trust that something good will grow." Anna ended the recording, her eyes misting. She had come here to escape her own ghosts, never expecting to uncover a story of heartbreak and rebirth. In helping Henry, she discovered her own reason to keep filming, to stand for something greater than sensational headlines. That evening, as the sun cast long golden shadows over the fields, they held a modest gathering at the farmhouse. Neighbors, local supporters, and even a few out-of-towners arrived, sharing casseroles and bones, raising glasses in a simple toast. Laughter rang out where once there was only silence. Andrew tinkered with an old record player Lucy had kept. Soon, a classic country tune filled the living room. Henry tried to suppress a grin, failing as he joined the crowd. Anna perched on a windowsill, filming just enough to capture the magic without intruding. She realized this was the real ending, not the triumphant corporate defeat or the official grants, but the small, precious moments of unity and belonging. 3 days later, Anna packed her SUV to leave. Henry and Andrew walked her to the driveway. "I guess we owe you," Henry said, his eyes full of genuine gratitude. She shook her head. "You don't owe me a thing. Thank you for trusting me with your story." A final wave, a swirl of dust on the road, and she was gone off to wherever her camera and heart would next guide her. Behind her, the Mathis farm stood under a broad Midwestern sky. No longer a place of quiet resignation, but a living testament that from desperate soil, seeds of hope and renewal could still thrive. In the end, the land endured scarred but unbroken, quietly carrying the memories of struggle and sacrifice. Fields once parched now sprouted new life, rooted deeply in courage and resilience. The farmhouse, weathered by countless storms, stood firm, a silent guardian of stories passed from one generation to the next. Yet victory did not come without a price, pride tempered by humility, trust built painfully from fragments of broken relationships, and a hard-earned understanding that true strength is sometimes found in the willingness to accept help. As the dust settled, one truth lingered: battles worth fighting often begin quietly, hidden behind the quiet dignity of those who refuse to surrender. The seeds planted today would echo into tomorrow, a gentle reminder of how fragile yet powerful hope can be. Now, Isamdan, as the sun dips beyond the horizon, casting long shadows across fields renewed, we pause to wonder when your own storm comes. What will you fight to protect, and who will stand beside you?